Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to our afternoon masterclass. Today's masterclass is by Brennan, and the title is Ireland's Hidden Textile Stories. So if anybody would like to make any comments or have any questions or anything, there's a chat box and a Q&A box at the bottom if they just like to type them in, and Lou will chat to you at the end. So I'll hand you over now to Lou, and thanks very much, Lou, for doing this. And so here we go. Okay.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mary. So I'd just like to start off with just thanking the Design and Crafts Council of Ireland for asking me to participate in this series of Mastercraft talks. And as Mary said, my piece is on Ireland's hidden textile stories. So I'd like to start with the story of Francis Nixon. So as a textile designer with over 20 years experience and designs in the V&A, I was surprised to read a book once by the V&A called English Printed Textile. And in the following I read, although some have credited French printers with developing copperplate printing, so-called toile de jouy, research indicates that Francis Nixon of the Drumcondra Print Works outside Dublin first developed the technique in 1752. So at the time I was textile manager for John Rocha, and I was making regular trips up to Drumcondra myself. We were screen printing for John Rocha's menswear range, all the t-shirts and whatnot. So of course I asked myself why I hadn't heard of Francis Nixon before. So the first major innovation in screen textile printing was with the copperplate printing. Previously, wooden blocks had been used, and you just couldn't really get fine detail or accuracy and repetition of print. So this was the first time that fabric could be printed with really fine detail, and the colours were fast. And this was all down to Francis Nixon. So he worked for 5 years in Dublin, and then he moved to Merton in Surrey, and he took on a partner, and he set up Nixon & Co there. Now, Nixon died in 1765, but the firm continued until 1789 when it was sold. And this would be an example. I've only got a print. I don't have any examples of original fabric. But this would be an example of something from the Nixon & Co company, a traditional like pastoral scene with archways and cows, you know, at water and windmills and whatnot. And also, I've regularly bought vintage shawls from a dealer in London called Meg Andrews, and she would also have worked with Sotheby's. So if you're ever interested in looking at absolutely beautiful vintage textiles, look at Meg Andrews. She's absolutely one of the best in the business. And this is a copper plate, a very, very rare copper plate gown from 1775 that Meg sold. This is a close-up of a print, and they think it's possible it's from Nixon & Co. So all these stories, I'm thinking, why don't we all know more about it? And Francis Nixon, he's buried in Merton graveyard, and on his epitaph it says, "I was the one, I perfected the art of copper plate printing." And there was even a verse written at the time in Merton, and I think we should have one here in Ireland. And this is what the people of Merton said. They said, "So Nixon, to thy praises lent the record of thy monument. Thou gavest the Merton printer's will, the perfect offspring of thy skill. And after ages own that thou art worthy of remembrance now." And I hope that we'll all remember Francis Nixon. So another of my stories, again with another Irishman from Dublin, was William Kilburn, and he was a fantastic watercolourist with botanical prints, so many in the V&A, and he was really dismayed that all his prints and his designs, and his colleagues as well, the other calico printers in London, they were being pirated almost as soon as they were being produced. So they appealed to Parliament, and he was the main, he represented the calico printers, and his name was on the bill. And eventually, due to William Kilburn and the first intellectual property law for printers, the Calico Printers Act was passed, and it unfortunately only lasted for 2 months. The second one then was for 3 months, but eventually then, I'm trying to think what the last one was called. It was called the Copyright of Design Acts, but they were the precursor to the intellectual property rights. So, and if anybody was at Scoop in London a couple of years ago, maybe some people from the Design and Crafts Council, I think if you had stands, This was one of the bags from Scoop, and that's one of William Kilburn's absolutely beautiful, fine detailed botanical prints. So he's still as relevant now as he was in the 18th century. So that's our William Kilburn. And so because of Francis Nixon and with being connected to the toiles, he was kind of largely forgotten because the technique moved on through England, through France, through Germany, through Switzerland. And eventually the Oberkamp brothers, they were late to the party, as they say, but they took on a factory outside Versailles, near Versailles, outside Paris. And they were appointed by King Louis XVI. And they were absolutely prolific with their the production. They had beautiful prints, and as I said, absolutely prolific with the production. So very quickly then the names like Francis Nixon and his contemporaries were kind of faded into the past. So I developed an Irish toile, and as a lover of linen, I'm surrounded by clues to the business of linen production here in Mayo. We have the Linen Hall in Castlebar that was started by the Binghams, Earl of Lucan, in 1790, and we had the Browns in Westport. So by the end of the 18th century, nearly half of Ireland's exports were linen related. And Ireland's climate, I mean, well, Ireland's climate, but definitely the climate in the West, the soil, it was well suited. And spinning wheels and seeds, the flax seeds, were sold at cost to the farmers, you know, to incentivize them to produce the flax seeds. And even my neighbors, they're quite old now, but they remember the fields with the flax being cut, and then you'd have to build a dam and some stagnant ponds, and you'd have to, it's called retting. So in one of my sketches in my toile, I even sort of represent, I don't know, can you see there, you know, where you have to soak the woody fibres, the woody stems rather, and release them from the fibres. We'll see this in a minute again. So that was the linen. And then just one last little story before I do a demo. My local shop used to be a lace school at the beginning of this century, and the Congested Districts Board, they were very involved in setting up lace schools, among many other things, in the west of Ireland. And the lace was doing very well here, and it absolutely lifted so many families up and out of poverty. But by World War I, the demand for luxury lace had kind of, it obviously, it fell by the wayside. So there was a Mr. Phelan, and he was responsible for all the workers. So he took himself off to London and to Manchester and eventually to Paris. And he said, I've got to do something about this. I need to find some way to keep these women working. So he identified that luxury buttons, pearl buttons and luxury buttons, were in very short supply. And also there was a war going off in the Atlantic with the U-boats, and lots of bales of cotton were being washed up on the western shores here, and they were nearly in pristine condition. So he came back and he couldn't find anyone to make a machine because they were all deployed for munitions. So what he did is he got a blacksmith to make some molds for the buttons. And and then it actually was so successful. So there was, and this would be an example. I know I've blown it up for you to see, but these absolutely beautiful buttons, and you'd see very similar examples in the Sheila Museum, where there's some beautiful examples of Victorian and Edwardian crochet coats and jackets and whatnot. So I think that's my story now. So I'll just get back on now to, sorry, I'm just looking for my notes now for screen printing. So I am going to do a little demo on silk screen printing, and just put my lace away now, sorry, here we go, just to make some space. So silk screen printing was developed by the Chinese. It was, the mesh used to be made of silk, but now it's polyester. This is a clear one, a very fine mesh. I like the aluminium frames, but you can get wooden ones. And I like to have a few clear ones on the go as well, because sometimes I like to cut my own stencils. And there's a company in Galway that sells these stencil card, and it means you can cut out your design and you can use them again and again. So they're actually quite sturdy. They're very easy to cut through, and they're quite sturdy. And that would be an example. I'm just trying to hold up to the camera. That would be like from my toile. I did a very basic, one of my, I think the man threshing and floral design there. And so I'll put this down and I shall move on. So just to explain how the design gets onto the screen. So I drew out my designs first, as I said, my Irish toile, and I wanted to represent some of the industries to do with crafts in Ireland. So as I said, the spinning wheels were almost given at cost to a lot of the women around here. And we had the lace maker there, and we have the retting there, and the gathering of the flax and the sewing and the bundling up and bringing to market. So you get your design first, and you need to put it on a transparency. So you can go for a transparency, or back in the day when I was at NCAD, we used to use cooking oil. So we would get this printed on like A3 paper, whatever size, and you would you would rub cooking oil onto your paper, and it actually makes it transparent, and it works just as good if you haven't got access to transparent to get your designs put on transparent paper. This works just as well. So as an example, then what happens next? I've shown you a clear screen first. So the next stage then, you would get your clear screen, and in a dark room, similar to a photographic studio, you would coat it with a photosensitive emulsion. It would have to be in a dark room because it starts setting in the light. When that photosensitive emulsion is dry, you get your design and you tape it to the back of your screen. I just have to open this one out because I have these two joined together. I think, can I just see it there? I think that matches up somewhere, somewhere like that, I think. Yeah, somewhere that. And this is then put in an exposing unit and exposed to UV light. And I think it's about 20 minutes or so when it's been exposed. That's usually enough. It's kind of a trial. You have to kind of test it to find out exactly the time. Each exposing unit is different. And what happens is the light passes through, and where it could pass through where there was no drawing, it bakes the emulsion hard. But where my black lines were on my transparency, the light couldn't shine through. So when I brought the screen to the power hose, the emulsion was washed away. So that means that when I go to print, the ink will pass through where my lines were. So that is, that's how a silk screen, that's how an image is put on a silk screen. And then the next thing you need to have ready are your squeegees. So there are loads of squeegees you can have ready. I mean, you can use rather. So obviously it's important to have one the size of your screen or the size of your print. And if you've got fine print, you want a fairly firm rubber on the end of the squeegee. So that's the one I'm going to use today. And then there's loads of others. There's some with sharper edges. And also you can mask off a small area of your screen if you just want to print a little bit. So that'd be an example of a smaller one. So I'll put these down for now. And again, this was just an example of something I printed with the stencil. And it just shows you can use that stencil over and over again. So I'm going to have to move the camera now, I think, just a little bit to the screen, and then you can see the next stage. So just bear with me. So just one other thing. When you're printing on your own, sorry if I've gone out of view, when you're printing on your own, this is a great tip. You can get a drawing board or any piece of MDF, whatever you like, and speedball do these aluminium hinged clamps, and you just screw them onto the back of your board. There you go, onto the front of your board. And you can adjust this here, you can put your screen in it, and then they're on a hinge. And it just means that when you're ready to print, you don't need anyone to hold the screen so that it doesn't like move around and ruin your design. So they're speedball, you can find them online anywhere, but silk screen printing hinge clamps, that's what they're called. So I'll put this board down for now, and then we'll quickly, so this is one I've set up, and I'll have to adjust the camera in a minute. So let me just turn it around. Sorry, I'm just literally swinging that down now, as you can see. Okay, and then let me just do that now. Is that okay? And then I have some colour mixed up here from earlier on. And just quickly, a quick chat about binders. As you can see here, we have a regular binder. If you want something, say if you're printing on black, you would need an opaque binder, if you're printing on a darker colour. And also you might like to have a little bit of metallic. So you can get lovely metallic powders. They're absolutely super fine. Like as soon as I open that, it comes out in the air. So they're metallic powders, and they go in a special binder if you like a little bit of pearl, a little bit of metallic. So I've mixed up a little bit of the binder, and I've mixed some opaque, and then the pigments are very, very, very concentrated. So you just need to literally dip, I just dip my knife in and just turn around. So you just need to have lots of old spoons and knives and whatnot. I'm just going to tilt the screen down now here. I'll just have to keep checking back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scoop out my ink like so. I'll just see, yeah. Just ahead of the print. I think I've just gone on the print, but anyway, this will be fine. There we go. And it's also another little tip, spatulas are great if you've got an old kitchen spatula for when you want to, because you don't actually need that much ink when you're printing. So you'll spend a lot of time scooping the ink from your screen and putting it back in the jar. So if you have a few of these little spatulas, they're perfect. And some people even use old credit cards to sort of scoop up the last bit of ink. They just seem to work really well. So as I said, I'm going to use a squeegee. That's the right width for my print. And I like to use about a 45-degree angle, and you've got to press firmly and kind of go for it. And so I'll just start printing now. So I'm going to pull the ink down here. Now I could go up the other way, but just because of today, I'm just going to do it this way again. I'm going to pull a second pull. It's called a second pull, like so. And then I like to do a dry pull. So there's the dry pull. There we go. And then I just scoop up my ink like so. This is what I usually do, and it works. There we go. All back in the pot. And then later on, I'll scoop up the rest with the squeegee, so with the spatula, as I said. So I just need to get something to rest this on while I lift it up. And hopefully it worked. Now let me see. Oh yeah, perfect. So if you can just see the print there, and I'm going to show you a few of my tea towels that I have done on linen, that they're all finished and they're all hemmed. So I'm just going to rest this there because I don't want the screen to go back down onto the design because it'll smudge it. So just put something there. There we go, and that'll stop it going down. So I'm just going to get a towel, an old towel I have here. Just wipe my hands before I show you some of the linen tea towels, and I'll reposition the camera again, if that's okay. Now, I don't want to get ink on it's quite messy. Printing is quite messy, but if you like mixing colours, and this type of thing as well, you don't have to have the colour all the same. You can kind of ombre, you can mix the colours in. There's no real rules with it. It's such good fun to play with. So these were some products that I made with my Irish toile. I got some linen from, I think it's a Storm colour. I think I got this from John England. And I got some feather fillers from Westport, lovely company in Westport. I made a lovely big wash bag, and I got all these little labels made with Irish sayings, like a good start is half the work. And I lined it with my own print there. And what else did I do? And just to show how you can, with the one screen, the different effects you can get. So I did some more cushions for the home there. So that was all the same. There we go. That was a different image there. Anyway, and what else? And these were then my tea towels. I did tea towels, absolutely beautiful linen from John England or Ferguson's. And here's one. And then I printed it here. Let's see what's here now. As you can see, my lady spinning. I don't know if you can see the quality of the linen. That's absolutely gorgeous. And I love mitering the corners. And I have all these little labels up with different sayings, because I just think it's a lovely surprise, you know, when someone's at dinner or something and they kind of look behind, or if it's a detail, it's just another little touch. And this one's "He who travels has stories to tell." So I think I think that's more or less coming to the end, Mary, of my demo. So I don't know if anybody's got any questions. Am I kind of on time, or have I gone too quick? Or
Fine, that's perfect. Thank you very much. That was really interesting, Lou. That was really good.
Thank you.
So there is a couple of questions here. Just the question is, what is the name of the shop where the lace school was in Castlebar, please?
Oh, it's now Coin Shop. So it was, yeah, it was a lace school, and it's Coin Shop in Boffinon. And before it was a shop, it was a school. Before it was a school, it was the lace, you know, it was a little national school. And before that, it was a lace school. Okay. And it was just like, there was more money coming in from, the women were making more from lace than the men were making from the fishing. You know, it was unbelievable, you know. And yeah. I love the story of Mr. Phelan, that he said, "You're not going to give up. There's got to be something." And off he headed to Paris, you know, in the middle of the war, you know, just before war broke out. You know, and apparently even during the Civil War, when like bombs were a bit like the bridges were, and they always managed to get their way to Ballina Post Office to get the deliveries out. So I just love the tenacity and the belief in it, you know, and as I say, it was just so important around here. And, you know, it's said that the best lace work came from the poorest of areas, like in Erris. So I just, again, these stories, when I sort of uncover them, and then as, that's you fantastic. Know, yeah.
Okay, and the next question then, where were the pearl buttons made? Well,
you see, the pearl buttons, this was what Mr. Phelan identified, that pearl buttons were in demand, and luxury buttons. So obviously the pearl buttons weren't made here, but so that's why he knew that he could make some other luxury buttons. So they got the crochet, they crocheted over the little moles. Do you know what I mean? So they didn't do the pearl buttons here. They did the really fine work with silk and with cotton, and they used a lot of the cotton that was washed up, you know, by the U-boats blowing up, you know, the other ships bringing deliveries in, and these bales of cotton being washed up on the coast of Mayo. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, the next question. Where do you get the stencil card, please?
Yeah, it's in Galway. I'm trying to think of the shop. I should have got that ready before. Can I let you know, Mary? Yeah, it's very easy to find, and it's very good. You just use a scalpel. It's very easy, and I've used it in workshops before. And you can use, you know, you can do bolder ones with children. But it's just if you think you're going to use it again, there's no need for it. If it's just a one-off, you know, you can use just a card or something. But if it's a stencil, you're going to take a lot of time, you know, cutting out, and you think you're going to use again, and maybe you haven't got access to getting a screen exposed. Yeah, I'll let you know, Mary, straight after this, because I just can't remember. Yeah.
Okay, and then there's another question. What is the name of the museum mentioned? I missed it. The museum mentioned.
Oh, the V&A, the Victorian Albert Museum.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, so the Victorian Albert Museum, as I say, I read in a book on English printed textiles, and this Francis Nixon name popped up, and they said he is the father of modern day printing. I went, oh, who? How do I not know this? How? And this is in a lot of academic papers, but it just doesn't seem to be well known. And you see, because like this would be typical of a toile de jouy, you know, everybody kind of knows this kind of print. But because even though the Oberkampf brothers were kind of late to the party, they were so prolific. They were brilliant businessmen, you know. They were, as I say, they were appointed by Louis XVI, and they had the best designers. There was, I think, Huet, H-U-E-T, I can't remember his first name, Dominic or something. And so that's why they were the ones then that we all know about, the toile, and they gave the name to toile de jouy, fabric of jouy, because that's where their factory was, you know, near Versailles. So, yeah.
Somebody else just said, you mentioned Sheelan Lace Museum.
Yes, so they have beautiful examples of these little crochet buttons. Now, I don't know if they're the ones that were made in Mayo, but it just showed the detail.
Yeah.
And as I say, and that's a fabulous museum. I was there a few months ago. I think I put some pictures up on my Instagram, you know, Lou Brennan Design. And the lady in there, she's very nice and beautiful, beautiful. It's like a museum and a shop, yeah.
Somebody else saying here that Lisburn Museum have great insight also, and they put up a link so I can
Definitely. I must go and visit that. I haven't visited there, and it's one of those ones. It's on the list. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The next question then: do you have a preference for thread count, and in brackets mesh?
Oh, for my screen, I think it's 43T. I wonder, is it written on? Yeah, for this screen. If it's the screen, I think it's 43T. Again, I could get back. I thought it might be written on it. For my memory, it's 43T. And you only need a more open one. I did used to use an open one years ago when I was printing with glitter. There was like a special glitter glue, and the glitter would get stuck in the really fine mesh. I can't remember which way it goes. Does it go to 33? And I get these from Dublin. Again, if anybody wants to know where I get these done, it's just gone from the top of my head. But they're lovely. They will advise if you kind of give them an idea of what you're printing. And again, when I left college back in the day and I couldn't afford screens and things, you can actually get a wooden frame. You can get some polyester voile, you know, like curtain fabric, the voile, not with any, just plain, a staple gun. You can make your screen, and you can even expose, in sunlight or with a lamp with a hot, with a high wattage bulb. There's lots of information online. So you actually, or even just a stencil, you can play around an awful lot, you know, just before you're not sure that you want to put much money into screen printing before you want to jump in. There's lots of hacks out there, and I've done it before, as I said, with an old picture frame and a bit of cut wire from, you know, a bargain bin at a curtain shop or something, and a staple gun. So that's absolutely all possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lots of people saying it's very enjoyable. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Lots and lots of questions. Where can I purchase your lovely tea towels? Where can they purchase them?
I'm going to have to start printing them again. I got a delivery of linen today, but it was beetle linen. So, because I need to make some cushions. So I've got some samples just in recently from John England, and I'm waiting on some more because they've got a new colour range out. So I'm just trying to think. It'll be on my website, or you can email me, hello@loubrennan.com.
Okay.
And because, oh, thank you. Yeah.
There's another couple of people saying, where do you get your labels made up? Beautiful work.
I get my labels made. These ones actually were in a again, can I let you know, Mary? Because is that the best thing to do? I'll give Mary a list.
Okay.
Then, that would be great.
Comments, they love that you put a little comment on the back and everything, you know. So.
Oh, I've got all these little, I'm trying to think of other ones. I've got Tus Malema Haber, and there's no fireplace like your own, there's no home like, you know, what's that, Tintin, that one or something. Yeah. And then I love the one, he who travels has stories to tell. That's another of my favorite.
Great.
I'm not going to pronounce, I'm going to try and pronounce that one, Mary. I'll leave that. Anyway, but again, people like them because, like, maybe if you're sitting down and you just kind of look, and again, people like sort of looking at the little toile, you know, and they're sitting down and thinking, you know, deciphering it and everything like that. And I try and put it on the label. So, and again, to you, Francis Nixon, as I say, you know, I think a few more people today have kind of, you know, they know about him now. Yeah.
Lou, thank you very much for that. There's lots of comments saying, very interesting talk. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Featured snippet from the web.
Sorry?
There's an Irish saying there. Neil Ain Tinton or the Tinton.
Yeah, I have that one as well. I have that one on pink. I use that one. I kind of vary them. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you. Fantastic. And your pronunciation's better than mine, Mary.
I think there for a minute, was I going to be?
I know, yeah.
I think there might be one more. Oh, I know. No, everybody's just saying that was really interesting. And thank you so much, Lou.
And again, please, I love, if anybody wants to come on Instagram, Lou Brennan Design, or email me at hello@loubrennan.com, or ask Mary, and Mary will get back to, you know, I'm more than happy to tell you where I buy my inks, my screens, you know, whatever. That's no problem. Yeah. So just
so much for that,
Thanks,
Lou.
Mary.
All right, take
Really
care.
enjoyed it. Take care. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.